What is up, Eagles fans? It is Tuesday night, 8 p.m.-ish, and you know that means it's time for me to welcome you to another episode of Birds of the Round Table. I'm your first-time host, so please go easy on me. As always, we want to get as many live viewers involved as we can, so start sending in your questions, comments, and thoughts. And while you guys are doing that, I will start introducing the guys. As always, we have three of the best in the business here on the Eagles Pinpool Network. I will start with Mr. Shane Half. He is your go-to all 22 guru. You can find him on every social platform at Shane Half NFL, given his unique brand of insight regarding the birds and the NFL in general. Mr. Half, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, David. It feels good to be sitting over here, have you in that host chair. You're killing it, man.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to do my best. Next up, we have our resident linebacking aficionado. Last year, when the Eagles were struggling down the stretch, he stated that the way you fight a bully is to punch him in the mouth. He's challenged former players to fist fights. Standing in at 6'3", 225 pounds, it is Philly's favorite son, Rowdy Ryan Reese. How you doing, bud?
I am doing fantastic. That was the greatest intro I've ever gotten in my entire life. I could pretty much die happy. This is the greatest night of my life.
Oh my gosh. All right. And last but not least, we have our self-proclaimed draft sicko. He is dropping shorts on every media platform while most people are sleeping. He goes by Mr. Crockpot on social. We call him Dobbs here on the podcast. And nobody actually knows what the hell his real name is. So please welcome Mr. Anonymous, Mr. Crockpot. How you doing, bud?
What on, man? David, you're killing it. Season pro over here. I don't know if any of us will ever be able to follow up this amazing host performance.
Yeah, it's one and done, but hey, that's what we're here for tonight. And all right, we will get this started by getting everyone's thoughts on last week's final preseason game. That we'll get into what everybody wants to talk about, and that is the Eagles' 53-man roster. So Shane, I'm going to start with you. What, if anything, did you take away from the last preseason game?
That I am so happy that it's over. I mean, man, you're excited for like week one of the preseason, and you get to watch second stringers play, and then you get to week two of the preseason, and it's still fine, but going into week three, you're just dreading it, and man, it lived up to the low expectations. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we don't have to do it for another year, and I'm glad next week we're previewing a week one game that actually matters. But I do think there's a couple guys, and we'll get into the roster, but I think there's a few guys that did secure their spot on the roster, like Tristan McCullum, Ben Van Sumeren. So some of those fringe guys, that game matters for them. But overall, I'm so ready to watch Jalen Hurts play football. Next Friday can't get here quick enough.
Thanks, link lineup. I agree with everything you said. One takeaway I always have from the last preseason game that a lot of people don't think about is that is the last time a lot of these guys are ever going to suit up. And a lot of people who don't make the roster, that's, it's a pretty hard day for a lot of those guys. We're all hating the game and can't wait for it to end. But for a lot of guys, their whole career is over at that point. So I don't know. I always try to remember that when I'm watching those games. Ryan, how about you? What'd you think?
Yeah, listen, I'll certainly piggyback off of what Shane said. It is kind of a tough watch, especially this game. It was just kind of ugly. I think we said multiple times, kind of to each other, like, are we just done with this? Like, but you're absolutely right, though, David. People's livelihoods are at stake, and again, it's thinking about that, you would hope that there would have been a slightly better product on the field, but again, some people stepped up and made themselves a roster, as you said. McCollum for sure is one notable guy, and there were a couple of guys that we really thought did enough, but we'll talk about that they apparently did not. So, but again, things can certainly change, but again, we're glad preseason's over. We got real football to talk about, and on to Brazil.
Dobbs, how about you?
Yeah, we got our first glimpse of Cooper DeJean. A lot of fans, I think, are overreacting a little bit. Yeah, he looked a step slow, but I think he's going to be fine. I hate to make this a negative, but I think the concerns about Nolan Smith are very much real. He's heading into year 2. He still looks incredibly raw. To be a non-factor against backups of backups is a major red flag. And I'm just not seeing a lot of variety in his pass rush move set. I'm very much worried about his weight. Getting a high amount of snaps. Can he handle bigger offensive linemen, starting offensive linemen on a week-to-week basis? At this point in time, I have to say no. And you look at Jalen Hunt, the guy has outperformed him in every single way. He looks like a much better fit in Vic Fangio's defense. I was just hoping to see, first-round talent out of Nolan Smith during the preseason, during training camp. And I got to say, I'm a little disappointed. I can't help but feel a little skeptical. Nolan Smith is a terrific athlete, but the reality is right now, that's all he is heading into year 2. And I think that also speaks volumes on the coaching staff. So I'm worried about Nolan Smith.
How about you, Shane?
Yeah, I agree with the Nolan Smith concerns. And I'm a guy that was fairly high on Nolan Smith coming out of the draft. And I mean, I knew he was raw. And it's always a little sketchy when you have a guy who's that small, but his number one trait is being good in the run game, because that just doesn't jive. But, I was betting on the athleticism, and I'm on record saying that I thought his last year was wasted by inept defensive coaching staff. But, man, it's the third preseason game. Just throw a counter move. Just try a spin. Try a cross chop, try a rip move, something. I don't care if you trip and fall down. Just try it, and he won't. And that's very concerning to me, that in a preseason game, he's unwilling to try any sort of a move. And that's my concern. It's not that, hey, he's not a polished product yet. It's that I feel like we're exactly where I thought he was coming out, which is a freak athlete that still doesn't have a clue how to rush the passer.
Right. So the lack of progression is the bigger concern. Ryan,
Right.
you agree with all that too?
Yeah, 1,000%. And Dives, touched on it too. Is now you have to wonder what's going on with the coaching. Are they just ignoring the fact? Obviously, if this is something that we see, they have to see it. So why are they not working on this with Nolan Smith in practice? Why is Nolan Smith not working with, BG or Sweat or whoever he needs to work with to work on, some of these moves and trying to get himself, anything. You can't just run around, everybody. It's not how the NFL works. So it is very concerning, one, for the fact that he's just not doing anything to improve himself, and two, how the coaches are not seeing this and forcing the change on him.
Right. One thing that caught my attention, other than just him playing the whole game, was at the end he said he didn't mind playing, and he intimated that it was his choice to do so. And then he later clarified that it was not his choice. He was just stating that I just didn't mind playing. But for somebody who didn't mind playing, they sure didn't show a lot. I mean, he didn't dominate versus third string OLs, and that just cannot happen. I mean, he is my guy. I root for him. Unlike Michael Pepperneck here, I was all on board on the Nolan Smith being taken at pick 30. Hell, I would have probably moved up 10 spots to have taken him. So I still believe in his talent, and I'm still waiting for him to break out. But I have to admit it, even I, as a diehard fan, am starting to get a little concerned as well.
Yeah, Shane threw it out during the post-game show. Could you imagine if they took Brian Branch, who's flying around for the Detroit Lions in that area? And I was just usually when the draft is over, I move on to the next draft, and I don't really hang on. So I just watch the Eagles. I watch the Eagles, and I watch the Eagles. I don't watch all the other nonsense in the NFL. More of a college guy. And when Shane said that, it kind of threw me back for a little bit. I'm like, oh, if we had Brian Branch, but that's another.
Well, reminds me of another safety they could have had a couple years earlier as well.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong with the Eagles and missing out on good safeties, but speaking of missing out on good safeties, they did draft another defensive edge, in one Brandon Graham, who wasn't good his first year, he wasn't good his second year. he took a while to develop. Sometimes players just take a little while to figure it out, and especially this day and age where we need instant gratification, we need instant results. People have such a shorter leash than they ever have before. I mean, we saw it all throughout, cut day today, that there were former first round picks, former, second, third from even a year or two ago that were getting cut, which is insane to think about, but people just don't have the patience as we once did. And I think if we give Nolan Smith that time, we could hopefully have ourselves another BG-esque ascension if we just give it the time.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, they do have very similar routes, assuming that he can end up being that way. They were both drafted for trades. They were both but they're very similar in size. So that is a good point. Anybody have anything else to add on a dreadful third preseason game before we move on?
Just quick shout out to Tristan McCollum, who put together 3 straight weeks of. We're gonna get into that in a little bit, but I thought well deserved.
Yeah, he earned it. Yeah, there was a few guys who we'll get into who preseason games did matter. They did earn a roster spot. So that's a good transition. So let's give the people what they want and get into the 53-man roster. We can start with the offense. They kept only 22 offensive players. Almost everybody projected like 25, but they went very light there. So Dobbs, I will begin with you. Give me an offensive player that you were most shocked that they kept and most surprised that they dropped.
Ooh, on offense, most shocked that they didn't keep. I'll go Dylan McMahon. First draft pick to not make the 53 since Jacoby Stevens, who was a 6th-round pick in 2020. I thought Dylan McMahon was fine during preseason and training camp. I'm shocked that they let him go. I'm very hopeful he is on the practice squad because who the hell is the backup center on this team? And then
Toth was gone. Gates is gone.
Yeah. And then I'll say the one player I would have kept. I guess EJ Jenkins. I really liked EJ Jenkins. I'm not surprised he was cut because he didn't make my final projected 53-man roster, but by far the best TE3 candidate on this team. Who knows? Maybe it could be Jack Stoll or Donald Parham or who knows what they do at this spot. But my goodness, I'm rooting for the guy.
I get it. Shane, how about you?
I was surprised that they got rid of both Brett Toth and Dylan McMahon. On my 53-man roster projection, that's the 2 guys I missed. I had both of those guys making the roster. Neither of them did. And so I'm surprised, especially now, there's no backup center. Like, both of those guys could have conceivably been backup centers. And so I'm not sure who that guy is at this point. As far as who I would have kept that they didn't, there isn't really anybody. I mean, everybody else I projected on the offense was kept except for Anaya Smith, who I projected to make the roster, and he did just via IR. So, right. I mean, IR shenanigans aside, they pretty much kept who I expected on the offense, just with the exception of what they did on the offensive line.
Right. And Dickerson can play center, but then you're having moving parts everywhere. You're replacing 2 positions on the line instead of 1.
Yeah,
they would something they do.
They would sign a street free agent and put him in at center before they would move Landon Dickerson.
What's up, Ant?
What's going on, Anthony? Best Eagles follow there is right there. Anthony DeBona does an amazing job covering the Eagles for PFF.
Yeah, he does really good. Ryan, how about you?
I think the 2 that have been mentioned already definitely didn't actually have them on my 53, but I'll say Paris Campbell. I know people have been saying he didn't really do enough, but again, he was hurt. He was dealing with a lot of stuff, and again, I think after you look at again, this is prior to the trade. You didn't really have another adult in the room, so to speak, and I thought Paris Campbell could have at least been kind of one of those vets, even if he was 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. somebody that could be relied upon to grab a first down when needed. I was a little shocked that he didn't.
Yeah. I was a little surprised with Alberto going on the IR. I mean, they come up with all these injuries that I had not heard of for the past few days. I mean, I figured he wouldn't be on the team, but I had no idea that they were, going to keep him for 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe they don't want to do the injury settlement. I have no idea. But so
My
where do you
bad.
think it's light? Wide receiver, they only have 5. You think where on the offense do you think they're going to address through this waiver wire period? Any of you?
I'm curious what they do, what kind of role they envision with Tyler Steen. Is he going to be the backup swing tackle? That's kind of something I'll be watching. I guess I kind of expected him to be somewhat on the IR, and he's maybe healthier than I thought. So maybe he's going to be the kind of the swing tackle for this team.
When I'm looking at the Eagles website, they actually have Becton at tackle, which is a little curious because it does not seem that's what he's going to be playing, but he's listed as a T on their website there. And when I think it was Spadero dropped the offensive line for the Eagles website, he just put everything as offensive line 9. He didn't really clarify how everything was. But
Probably swung that way.
yeah, I still wouldn't be surprised if they're looking for another receiver. I don't think the offense will stay at 22 players, but you never know. I mean, they might be happy with it. And if 2 of the 3 guys who they left that can play center there, I'm assuming they're playing the game. I mean, Brett Toth has been a member of the team for the past 4 seasons or something. So I'm assuming they believe that they're going to be able to get them back through the practice squad, and then maybe they'll just do weekly elevations. But anything else with the offense?
Yeah, well, I honestly think they would bring in a tight end 3 and potentially a 10th offensive lineman. I think 22 is extremely low for offense. I know, again, we have a lot of really great options defensively. There was probably a lot of hard decisions there, but still, I don't see how they don't add and at least get up to 24 offensive players come week 1.
Yeah, they're definitely going to add a tight end. That's no question about that. I don't know what they're looking for.
Aaron?
I keep reading that Hurts really trusts Stoll in the pass protection. So I think Ryan's favorite son might be coming back, but
he
I'm
might
cut that man's hair.
He might trust him in pass protection, but he doesn't trust him to catch a football.
Not at
Because
all.
I can show you a dozen plays from last year where Jack Stoll was the read and wide freaking open, and
Absolutely.
Jalen Hurts wouldn't throw him the ball.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Parent just got released from the Chargers. I've always kind of liked him.
and I guess Kellen Moore's worked with them too, right?
That is true.
And Shane, doesn't the pretty much expectation for Kellen Moore is to run a ton of 11 personnel this year, right? So we're only going to see one tight end on the field a lot in 2020.
Probably, yeah.
Is that true?
Well, it depends. Kellen Moore will change what he does a lot, but I do think he will use. You're going to see a lot of 11 personnel, and I think you're going to see a lot of 11 personnel because it's what the Eagles are best suited for, and that's one thing that I think that Moore does a good job with is that he'll change his scheme, he'll adapt it to personnel. So you'll see 11 personnel, you'll probably see 12 personnel, you may see some 21 personnel, but I think you're going to major in 11 personnel, especially with the weapons that the Eagles have right now.
Brian has a question for you, Shane. How do you feel about the Rams using their RB1 as a kick returner?
I like it because the way, you didn't used to want to do that because you've got a guy sprinting full speed down the field. Like, you don't want to get a guy injured. The new kickoffs is basically a run play. They don't get the big running start if he's good at it. Now, I don't know if Saquon would be good at it, so I'm not saying put Saquon out there, but Kyron Williams, if he's good at it, go for it. If Saquon was good at it, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It's just one more touch. It's not like you've got a guy flying down the field anymore at you.
True.
Yeah. The Eagles have had Kenny Gainwell back there, so it is an RB1, but they definitely have similar thoughts.
Whatever. Who cares?
It's your another one of your favorites, Ryan.
Yeah, whatever. Let somebody come flying down at Kenny Gainwell. Whatever.
Good grief.
In 2022 at Dallas, Kellen Moore, 63% of his plays were out of 11 personnel, and 22% of his plays were out of 12 personnel. So he'll use 2 tight ends. That was like 11th in the NFL in terms of 2 tight end usage. So you'll see it, but you're still going to be in 11 personnel way more.
David says, do you think Johnny Wilson could be a hybrid tight end that gets him into like 11.5 personnel?
No, he's not a tight end, but he can be a big slot that can block it. Johnny and I have been calling that 11.5 personnel on our film review podcast. Whenever Johnny Wilson's on the field with a tight end in the slot, we just start calling it 11.5 personnel.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Johnny himself at training camp said that nobody has come to him about playing tight end. It's never been discussed. He's a wide receiver, so I'd be very surprised if they use him in such a way.
Yeah. I do like the fact that we're slowly ramping up Johnny Wilson, not just throwing him into the fire. I do think we were drinking a bit of the Kool-Aid like the first couple of weeks of preseason. Glad to see Johnny Wilson kind of, have a slower start to 2024.
Right. All right, well, let's move over to the defense. I guess I'll start with you, Ryan. Who were you most surprised they kept and most surprised they cut?
Honestly, I don't think I had too many surprises on what you want me to say.
There's one guy last night that you're like, there's stone cold no way they're keeping on this roster.
Oh, I didn't say no way. I just said
Ryan is surprised that they kept.
Fine.
Ryan is surprised they kept Ben Van Sumeren
There it
because
is.
when Dives and I were saying that on the post game show, he was like, "You think they're going to keep 5 linebackers?"
It's
And he's the linebacker guy.
I know, and I didn't see it.
Let me zoom in on this for you, Ryan.
Look. I mean, listen. I get it. I get the other 4. They all make sense, but again, I just thought they were. I also didn't expect them to keep 22 offensive players. So again, had I known that going into it, then yeah, sure, Ben Sumeren could have had a spot, but not over another offensive lineman, not over another wide receiver. Whatever.
I think the overload is in defensive backs. I had them keeping 5 linebackers the whole time. Those exact 5 were the same 5 I projected for weeks, mainly because Warren Burks got hurt. I'm sure they'd love to get him on the practice squad. He looked really good in the last game there. He's finally healthy, and he looks like he could contribute to the defense if he was given a chance at some point. But it's a strange thing to talk about the linebackers having depth for the Philadelphia Eagles, but it unquestionably is not the biggest position of concern anymore, which is really wild. How about you, Shane? Who are you most surprised they kept and most surprised they cut?
I didn't really have any surprise cuts off of the defensive side, but I was surprised that they kept Marlon Tuipulotu. I thought Thomas Booker earned that spot, and they kept Thomas Booker. I just didn't think they would also keep Marlon Tuipulotu. I mean, he's been here for a few years. I don't feel like he's ever really given the Eagles a lot, and you've got Moro Ojomo. You have Thomas Booker, who flashed a little bit in the preseason, so I expect Marlon Tuipulotu did not make my final 53 projection. Eli Ricks didn't either, but he was the first guy out that I would have liked to have kept on, so I'm glad they found a spot for him.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I was very happy for Thomas Booker, like what Dives was mentioning earlier. He's another guy who I think benefited from the joint practices, from the preseason games. He got to show his worth, and they rewarded him for his hard work. So how about you, Dobbs? What do you got?
Yeah, the player that is weird they kept was James Bradbury. I know I had him on my final 53-man roster, but it's just weird, like.
Do you think it's just because they're trying to trade him? They said they were in negotiations all day long.
I hope so. Like, he's not a guy that's going to play special teams. He clearly can't tackle. We saw it in the preseason. We saw it all last year. I hate the fact that he's on this team, and if that dude isn't out there playing special teams every freaking time, just a total waste, an absolute waste.
So we all had him we all had him on our 53, correct?
Yeah.
I did not. I didn't since the playoffs last year. I have not had him ever making a 53. But and I wasn't going to start now. But would you waive him for Lewis Seen? I did not mention him to any of you guys before we came on here. But did you like him?
Lewis Seen is a guy that I was really high on during the draft process. Didn't show a lot, but he did have a very solid preseason. He was flying around. I remember having a whole segment ready to talk about Lewis Seen during the Eagles preseason game. So I would be definitely interested in that.
I mean, he'd be back with 5 Georgia players that he's played with over his career, which
That would be what he needs.
yeah, maybe it's not working for Nolan Smith, but maybe it would work for Lewis Seen. I don't know. So the 11 defensive backs.
I got to say something about Lewis Seen real fast because it's fun fact. I just pulled up our rankings.
Oh,
Dives,
no.
Do you remember
no.
where you had him ranked?
No, I have no idea.
So, fun fact, Dibes, Mark, and I have been doing draft rankings for several years together, and we always do them independently, and then we put them into a spreadsheet. And sometimes there's guys we are just worlds apart on, and sometimes we're not. And independently, Dibes, you, Mark, and I, all 3 had him number 35 on our big board. So we had an extreme consensus that he was a fringe first-round pick.
I think I had him right around there too. I've been doing this since 2020. I'm almost certain. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure it's right.
Looks like
around.
you had him at 15.
Oh my gosh.
At least that's where I put your rankings in later. So as long as you didn't send me an outdated ranking or something.
No, I have never touched him again, so that's probably accurate. So the 11 defensive backs. How many do you think it's really going to be when the games start in 10 days here?
10.
Yeah.
10.
I
So
think
who goes?
I think they're
Bradbury in
going
a
to
trade.
I think they will try to trade Bradbury.
Sure.
If that doesn't work, it would not surprise me if out of nowhere, Tristan McCollum, that hamstring's been bothering him a little bit. He's going to have to go to IR for a couple weeks, and it wouldn't surprise me to see that sort of thing happen too. But I really doubt that they have all 11 of those guys week 1, because I do think they'll make a move for a third tight end or something like that.
So where does the extra spot go? Back on offense, tight end?
Yeah, that would be tight end or backup center would be my guess.
Yeah.
Do you still
Were
think
y'all
Eli
surprised?
Ricks?
Say
Sorry.
what?
Do you think Eli Ricks holds any trade value?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I do as well. I think it's a big reason they didn't want to cut them. 10 of the 24 players waived last year that were selected during the waivers last year. 10 of the 24 were defensive backs, including the one that all of y'all made fun of me for wanting the Eagles to keep, Kayvon Wallace, who's a team captain now for the Tennessee Titans. But
that's crazy.
it is crazy. But yeah, defensive backs are valuable. You heard Howie talk about it in the presser after they released the 53-man roster. He just was not going into the year like that. I was a little surprised that they got rid of Job. If for no other reason, just his special teams prowess, I thought they could find a way, and maybe he'll find his way back if they move Bradbury and do a phantom kind of injury thing with McCollum. I don't know, but did any of you have him there? I've been reading that Ringo might be taking those special team snaps, which I find a little strange.
I think that Job will get picked up somewhere. I think Ricks would have got picked up for sure if he got waived. I think Job is going to as well because, depth defensive backs are so valuable, like you said, because they can play special teams. They're fast. They play special teams. You play so many defensive backs, it's always good to have the depth. So I think Job will get claimed somewhere. I think Ricks would have some trade value, but I would imagine the Eagles want to keep him. I think they like Ricks, and I had a lot of people on Twitter that were like, why is Ricks on the roster? And Ricks should have never been put in the slot. That's not where you ask that guy to play. And the Eagles, again, the inept defensive coaching staff last year put him in a lose-lose situation. Surprise, he lost. Eli Ricks should have never been asked to defend CeeDee Lamb out of the slot one-on-one time and time again. He's a better player than fans think he is, that doesn't mean I want him starting this year. But
Right.
you could do a lot worse in a pinch than having to put Eli Ricks as your CB 5 or 6 outside to play cornerback. That's why he's here.
Yeah, I agree. He was definitely misplaced, misutilized last season. When he was in good situations, he looked great. I mean, a lot of people were raving about him after that game versus the Dolphins. I mean, it was Tyreek Hill. I don't remember what he did that game, but it wasn't much. I mean, he wasn't targeted, but so frequently, but it was pretty impressive. And to stay on the topic of cornerback, most of us on here have been talking about this all summer about they might use a hybrid of guys out there like playing matchups as far as Ringo and Isaiah Rodgers. And it looks like in base defense that Quinyon Mitchell might be the outside cornerback in base. It looks like it's trending that way. And then when he moves inside, Rodgers or Keeley will come on the field. So do you all agree with that? And if you do, who do you think's getting more snaps this year? Keeley Ringo or Isaiah Rodgers?
I think that Keeley Ringo will end up getting more snaps than Isaiah Rodgers. Maybe I'm just hoping that because I think he's clearly the better player. But that's my hope at least.
How about you, Ryan? You look a little excited.
Listen, I still have hope that Keely's my number 2, but if you're now you put that over my face. It's not that great. Thanks, Dives. Why don't you get out of here? Okay.
For what it's worth, on the base defense thing,
Okay.
the Dolphins last year only played 18% of their snaps with a base defense.
Oh.
You're not going to see it often.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah,
We'll pay that guy.
I disagree. I think Isaiah Rodgers will get more snaps than Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo is your best press guy. He's looked terrific during the preseason. I'll say, at least from what I saw during the games, Keely Ringo outperformed Isaiah Rodgers. But I think at the end of the day, I think we'll see more Isaiah Rodgers. And I'm just so curious how they utilize Cooper DeJean in the nickel. Like that is going to be just all 22 bliss, just pure all 22 bliss, watching how Vic Fangio utilizes him across the football field. I don't think he's ready yet. I think that's okay. I think he still probably needs a couple of weeks to get going and let the speed of the NFL come to him. But I'm curious and what that means for Q to go to the outside. It's going to be really fun to watch.
I mean, think about it. Think about it this way. Right now, we're talking about 5 cornerbacks that we're excited to see out on the field. 5. Like when in the hell have we ever had anything remotely close to that? We have Slay, who we all know what he can do. The competition between Rodgers and Keeley, all off season. Then you have kind of Q, who's, is he playing here? Is he playing there? And then, of course, Coop DeJean. Which, by the way, there was a comment earlier about number swapping, and I will absolutely riot. Right here, riot. If Coop DeJean switches off 33, I will not be happy. I want him to have 33 so bad. So bad.
I do want to add that, like, a lot of people were killing Cooper DeJean. There were people in our comments saying he's a bust already and all this kind of stuff. But I will say, like, what I wanted to see from Cooper DeJean was I thought his run defense looked really solid. And at the end of the day, like, I'm so fascinated at this guy and how he could be like this dime linebacker in situations. And you know how much Vic Fangio is going to run nickel and dime, like him and his run defense and tackling. That's what I want to see from Cooper DeJean from the jump.
Over under 100 defensive snaps for Cooper DeJean this year.
I'm over.
Yeah, I'm going over. I'm smashing over.
I'm going like double. Like,
I think they're going to put the best players on the football field, and Cooper DeJean by like week 8, week 10 is going to be out there a lot.
I think I'm under on that. I don't think he's going to play a lot this year. Personally, I think the hamstring injury definitely hurt him. I think you get into the where do you play him, and we're talking like dime linebacker, slot corner. We're talking safety. Those are all very different. They got a lot, like the Fangio defense has a lot of coverage rules. I think it's going to be tough for him. And I don't think I don't think it means that at the end of the year, if he plays 100 defensive snaps, Eagles fans should be like worried about him, because I just think there is a logjam at the position.
Sure.
You also went and got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and yeah, Eagles X's and O's here mentioned Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown's coming back, and he can play slot, and he can come downhill a lot too. So there's a bit of a logjam created there. I think we might see less of DeJean than people think, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, we did see some stiffness in the hips last Saturday, and that's something that I've been saying and calling out. And I got a lot of shit about it during our NFL draft process, and I call him. He was my number one safety in the class. I do think inevitably he will be moved to a safety role like C.J. Gardner-Johnson in some respects. So I do expect, if there's an injury, I do hope that he gets a start there, and I do think he will run away with it and crush that role.
Yeah, obviously, if injuries happen, he's going to get out on the field more. But in a fully healthy world,
Right.
I could see it being tough for him this year.
But when you're talking about the people ahead of you being James Bradbury and Avonte Maddox and older players, one of them older, one of them injury prone, I mean, I guess it could happen. I'm really fascinated by all the multi-positional eligibility these guys have, man. Bradbury can play two positions. Maddox can play more. They're going to have Cooper DeJean, who can play more. CJ can play more. I mean, they really have a lot of versatility that they can throw at teams this year. So it should be interesting to watch that play out. But before we get off of this, go ahead. You got something?
I love this comment, like tip passes at the line of scrimmage. We need to get back at that. Like,
They never do this.
hands up, guys. Like,
Put your hands up.
God,
Never.
that's something the Eagles are terrible at, I feel like. And
For years.
For decades. Let's be
I
honest.
want to see this, and more of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also
More tip drills.
Also, real quick, I have to comment on Brian's. So, Brian, the only reason why I say this is I'm literally trying to get a jersey from 0 all the way to 99 in an Eagle player. 33, you're right, it is a nasty number. There is no one. That's why I need somebody. I need him to stay. I'll probably still get it either way and just be one of those like shady 29 jerseys. But still, I need him to stay. That's all.
All right. Well, we will hope for that for Ryan's sake. So before we get off the 53-man roster, almost everybody on here agreed that edge rush, pass rush is the biggest concern now.
I agree.
So they went with 6. If they are able to upgrade that position through the waiver wire, through a trade, anytime before the season starts, who is the guy who would be off of the list? Ryan, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think at the bottom of that is unfortunately Patrick Johnson. Even though I thought he had a great preseason, he obviously won the first game single-handedly. Besting what Brandon Graham could have done in the Super Bowl. He recovered his own fumble. But listen, I think Huff isn't going anywhere. Hunt isn't going anywhere. They're not done with Smith, and obviously they're not done with Sweat. It's got to be Patrick Johnson. And
you would agree they can't go 7.
7's a lot. I mean, 7's a lot, honestly. I mean, but if you think about it, what Dives is basically saying about Nolan Smith, that he's kind of like a half a edge rusher as it is. So maybe, but listen, there's a plethora of edge already on free agency, and that you can pluck to bring into this team that would be better than a few of the guys that we already have. Brandon Graham's barely going to be playing, let's be honest. It's his farewell tour, so I'd look to bring in a veteran free agent that's already out there, or somebody who got released today.
Shane, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, if they added someone, if they cut an edge, it would be Patrick Johnson, but I could see you going back to defensive tackle there and saying, do we really need 6 of those guys? And for me, it would be Marlon Tuipulotu. For them, it might be Thomas Booker, but I could see one of those guys getting caught up in that too, because you can kick Brandon Graham inside, especially
Right.
if you're playing like 3 technique or 4-eye or something like that. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, but those are basically the only guys it could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, I agree. I would probably move Marlin and move, like
That's
you
where I'm
said,
at.
kind of BG inside. Dobbs.
I fully agree with that. Like, I get the appeal of having a backup nose tackle for Jordan Davis. But I was really impressed with what I saw out of Moro Jomo and Thomas Booker. I think those are two guys that can play all across the defensive line. Of course, Milton Williams as well. I think Marlin would be the odd man out.
Yeah. Yannick
So-
Ngakwe. Let's get him.
So Marlin, if they're going to grab 2 people off the waiver wire, it's not coming from the offense because they only have 22. So they're going with 28 defensive players. So 2 of them are gone. Marlin and who else?
James Bradbury.
I don't know. That'd be a crazy cut at this point, but
Yeah, that would be kind of a jerk move to not.
They
give
can still
time.
move him, right?
Yeah, I mean they can still
yeah, they could
trade.
flip him for a 7th round pick or something. I mean, I don't know. But you would think if they could, they would have already.
Siaki Ika got cut.
I
Yeah.
have no idea.
You did.
I liked him.
I liked him too.
Interesting. I did not know that.
So
we
do
have
any of you guys have anything else in regards to the 53?
Lot
No.
can change between now and Brazil.
Yeah. I expect at least 3 positions to change by then. I mean, I don't know where it's coming from, but I would think 3 of these guys who made the team somehow are going to end up on the practice squad, waived on another team, something.
Yeah. Brian says all the Nolan Smith slanders made him a Nolanite.
Yeah, I like Nolan. I ain't slanderizing him at all, but he does have to show some progression.
That's all we're asking. All we're asking. I'm curious to see how much Jalen Hunt gets out on the field. I ran a poll. Let me show the results real quick, which are pretty interesting. Because if you would have run this poll like probably a month ago, I guarantee you the results would be like very much different.
Yeah, I've seen this poll already.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it.
Hold on, I screwed up. Hold on 1 second. But I basically put out a question: who's going to get more snaps between Jalen Hunt and Nolan Smith by the end of the season? Sorry.
Nasty work.
3,000 votes. It's 67% Nolan Smith and 33% Jalen Hunt. Like, you asked that question like before preseason, like it's probably like 95% Nolan Smith.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'll be curious to see that as well. I still think Nolan will get more snaps. I think that's just what's going to happen, but it was a great question. All right, man. So we are done with the 53-man roster. If anybody has anything else to say, now is the time. Go around the horn here, starting with Ryan. Final thoughts, plugs, whatever else you want to do. Challenge another former player to a fight. Anything you got, man?
Oh wow! I mean, I could just do that every show. Just challenge somebody new.
Yeah,
I
pay-per-view,
wouldn't
man.
mind.
I think we'll get good views.
Believe me, there's plenty of them that I would love to face off about. But yeah, no, honestly, I'm glad that we're finally here at this point with the Eagles roster. It took a long time coming, but again, we have a mere what is it, like 11 days left, something like that. I can't really count until Brazil, and almost a week away from the opening game on Thursday night too. So it's glad. I'm glad to have final real football. Yeah, I already had a couple fantasy football drafts, so that's when I really know it's starting to get real. And yeah, listen. Otherwise, you can always find me here every Tuesday, 8:00 on the Best Eagles show. Please make sure you guys are going out and following the Eagles Pinpool Network. Share it to all your friends, your family, your coworkers.
5-star reviews.
5-star reviews, everywhere where you can find podcasts, the Spotifys, the Apples, the Googles, all of it. please. Any little thing does mean a lot to us, honestly. So we're hoping to continue to grow this thing. We got 6 shows heading into the season. Cannot wait to see where we go from here. But please make sure you're also following all these other guys here. And honestly, David, you did a great job hosting for the first time. It only took us like 7
18
years
months.
here. Yeah, like
Just 18 months. I mean,
joking along the way to finally get you here. But we did it. You did it. You popped your cherry.
oh, Lord. Suddenly
feels
sounds
like-
like an 80s movie. Oh, my gosh.
Feels
All
like the very first time.
All right, Dibes, as Andy Reid used to say, time's yours.
That's what I say. Anyway, yeah. First thing first. Like David, you crushed it. Like that. The intros for Ryan and Shane were unbelievable. Like,
Yeah, I like yours, too.
I'm gonna clip that myself.
I literally still don't know your first name. Like, that intro was not a joke.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him. Don't do
no,
it.
absolutely not.
I like Dibes and Crockpot. I'm good with that. I really enjoy that.
Love it. The mystery is what keeps us going.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, college football season started. My week 0 winners of the week are on the channel. It was, oh my gosh, Jamal Haynes out of Georgia Tech, and it was RJ Maryland out of SMU. Just a blurb and a quick scouting report on those 2 guys. I'm going to be doing that every single week. Top college football standouts week in, week out. Right after this, we'll be doing a live week 1 preview of Georgia and Clemson, our top Eagles draft targets and players of the week predictions. This is like my Christmas, man. I absolutely love it. So be sure to go check that out. It's got also like highlight reels and things like that. So today I put out my interview with Peter Bukowski, the host of Locked On Packers. So if you're ready for week 1 between Eagles and Packers, go check that out. I added highlight reels and things like that. Peter was an amazing host. He really breaks down kind of what he expects from the Packers and how they're going to handle Jalen Hurts and the Eagles' rushing attack and things like that. We talk about matchups to watch and things like that. So make sure you go check out that interview. It's on pretty much any platform you're looking for. And that is it.
Yeah, definitely check that out. I watched it on my lunch break. It was very well done, man. Y'all both did really good. It was a lot of insight into that.
Yeah.
I then went on DraftKings and made a wager because I was so convinced. Shane, so what do you have, man?
Man, it's always fun when you start off college football season on Armchair Scouts saying your Eagles target of the week is tight end RJ Maryland. And then the Eagles only keep 2 tight ends because they don't have a worthy third tight end. And then RJ Maryland has 162 receiving yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, if you're not checking out the Armchair Scouts, what are you doing? Like, let's start getting those names on your radar. Like Dibes said, we're about to go live after this show. But, yeah, check out the Eagles Pinpool Network. Give us a rating if you have not yet. We're trying to hit 100 ratings before the season kicks off next Friday. And we've got, I think last time I checked, it was 52 on Apple Podcasts and 43 on Spotify. So we're close. Help us push it over that hump. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And we're ready to get into the regular season. I can't wait, man.
Yeah.
Also, David, you're hosting like the next month now. You got to host till the Eagles lose.
I'll never have another good intro like that ever again.
We're doing since David, you're in this now. You're part of this. Yeah, you're in the club. And
let's hope
we're gonna do exactly what we did every single week.
Oh,
You
my
host
goodness.
until they lose.
Oh,
And
my
that's
goodness.
the way it works.
Yeah, well, I can't spend 4 hours on every Tuesday talking in a mirror trying to prepare for this.
What's funny is like we've all been there, David. Like everyone has done that. Everyone has been here, take their dog for walks and just practice and talking to the air and all that stuff.
I have my practice down to like an hour now. So, I mean,
throat exercises and stuff. Yeah, it was a
Practice.
rough couple hours.
We all
hair and
practiced.
makeup. They had a
Oh,
hard
yeah.
time working with me,
Oh,
but yeah, I got it done. But I want to give credit to all the guys, man. All y'all have been putting in a lot of work getting ready for this season, going through the grind of the summer and the spring and the draft. And we're finally at regular season games. And next week we'll be back to making predictions. Ryan's already projected the Eagles 17-0. We get to pick what we think we're going to see on the field. And hopefully, man, we'll get ready for another Super Bowl run. I mean, I don't think it's that far fetched. I think that they could have a really, really good season. So keep promoting all you guys, doing everything you do. Keep following all these guys. Follow Ryan at Philly Sports PSA. Follow Dibes at Mr. Crockpot. Shane at Mr. Shane Half NFL. Luckily, you took that off the air. I had it memorized. And everybody give those 5-star ratings to Pinpool Network. Dibes will buy the 100th, what are we looking for?
Reviewer.
What'd you say? You have 40 and 40. What'd you say, Shane?
I think it's 52 and 43 when I checked earlier today.
Right. So if you're number 100, Dibes is going to buy you a slushy from somewhere. I don't know. What do y'all have in that area?
I
You
mean,
got a
if
wine
we need
slushy,
like
a beer
Eagles
slushy.
if we need Eagles shit to sell, look up over there.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I hate the mirror. Ryan might have 1,000 Eagles crap in his house. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. So he'll give you a jersey of some player that you're the 100th. You're going to get one of Ryan's jerseys, a game-worn jersey. Ryan actually wore it on game day. The player didn't, but Ryan did. So
I sure did. I tailgated the crap out of that thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a pair
Cooper
of one
Machine 33 jersey.
All right, y'all. Well, again, thank you for participating. Everybody who asked questions, everybody who commented, please give those 5-star reviews. Eagles Pinpool Networks. Until next week, Tuesday, 8 o'clock ish. We will see you then. All right, guys. Later.